All right, we finally made it. We made it to the National RV Training Academy, the Big Red Schoolhouse. After anticipating being here for over a year, we finally made it here. We're excited about it. We'll be here for about 5 weeks of training and to learn how to become an RV technician. Mainly because I want to be able to work on my own RV. I don't want to have to call a technician, or I certainly don't want my RV to be, in the shop for 5 or 6 weeks or something like that, waiting on service. I want to be able to fix stuff myself. So we're here to learn to become an RV technician. Super excited about that. 5 weeks of training. The first week is fundamentals. That'll be learning about just the basics of an overall basics of everything that we're going to be covering, from the electricity, how to use multimeters, how to diagnose with electricity, plumbing, propane, the basics. And then after the first week of fundamentals, then we'll move into the advanced classes, and we're looking forward to those. So right off the bat will be the advanced refrigerators class, and that's going to be learning how to work on the absorption refrigerators, how to troubleshoot them, how to find problems and fix problems. And that's super exciting. I'm really looking forward to that. And then from there, we move on to the next class. The third week will be air conditioners. And that's what I'm really excited about. I love air conditioners. Love the idea of being able to fix my own air conditioner if something goes wrong. Because, when you're hot, you're miserable. And I want to be able to work on an air conditioner. So this class is going to teach me how to do diagnosis, troubleshooting, finding problems with that air conditioner, but also learning how they operate. Air conditioning along with the heat pump function and all that. So I'm really looking forward to that as well. And then the fourth week is going to be learning about water heaters and furnaces. But every RV's got a water heater and a furnace. And so being able to troubleshoot that, find out the problems of those, and just fixing any issues that we come across. Because I've come across some issues with our own heater or furnace, and I didn't know what to do. So after this class, I'll know what to do. And then the fifth week of training will be the exteriors, and that's learning how slide outs, awnings, roofs, the jacks and the stabilizers and the levelers and all of that. Learning both electric and hydraulics, and just going through the whole system and learning how to do that. So we are very excited about these next 5 weeks we're here. But actually, we're only here for more than 5 weeks because we have a week of Thanksgiving in there between some of the classes. So we're actually going to be here at this RV park for the next 6 weeks. Super excited about it. Can't wait to get started. Let's do some training.
While attending classes at the National RV Training Academy, students stay right here at the Texan RV Park, located directly on campus, which means your commute to class is measured in steps, not miles. The park has an office and gift shop stocked with NRVTA swag and basic tools you might have forgotten to pack, because apparently no one brings everything. There's also a clubhouse with a full kitchen, making it the perfect place to study, get some work done, or pretend you're studying while you're actually hanging out for game night. Don't have your own RV? No problem. There are tiny homes available on campus, so you can still stay right in the middle of everything. When class is over, you can unwind at one of the catch and release fishing ponds. And on most Tuesdays and Thursdays, food trucks roll in, because nothing says successful study day like tacos you didn't have to cook.
All right, let's talk about week 1 of the NRVTA. Week 1 is fundamentals. So gives you the whole general overall view of all the systems on your RV. And so it was 5 days, Monday through Friday, was week 1 fundamentals. And it was pretty good information. A lot of it was information that, most people, well, I'm not going to say that. A lot of people already know. Basic using a multimeter, things like that. So basically, it started out with basic electrical. I mean, we're talking very basic. So, what is voltage? What is amperage? How does electricity flow? What's a conductor? Things like that. So very basic electrical information. But, a lot of people don't have that knowledge whatsoever. I mean, I grew up in a household that I just knew that kind of stuff, learning from my dad, and then in the military, I worked on electronics and stuff like that. So I had kind of a sense of that. And we started out with the 3 different types of electrical systems on an RV. A lot of people don't know that there's actually 3 different types of electrical systems on the RV. You start out with your chassis system, and that's based off of, if you have a motorhome, chassis system based off your running, the running of the engine, how it, the alternator, the battery, the starter battery, all that kind of stuff. But on a fifth wheel or towable, it's the same thing. Your tow vehicle is the chassis electrical system. That 7-way pin that comes here and runs your tail lights and your running lights and brake lights and all that, that's part of your chassis electrical system. And then the second system is your coach system, and that is things like your lights inside, all the 12-volt stuff that runs inside. So your water pump, your furnace, things like that run off of 12 volts. That's your coach system. And then the third system is your house system, and that's your 120 volt, your outlets, your microwave, air conditioners, things like that. So there's 3 completely different electrical systems in an RV. So we learned about that. Of course, we went over Watt's law and Ohm's law, how to use those to make calculations when you need to find out, something. If you're troubleshooting and you need to be able to read data plates. So we learned about data plates. Every component basically has a data plate, and that's how you find out what the reading should be. If you're testing a capacitor, say, and you need to know what capacitance needs to be, well, you look at the data plate on the capacitor and it'll tell you what it should be. So that way when you test it, is it high, low, is it right, things like that. So we went over that. We went over the capacitors, how to test them, how to use the multimeter, just basic multimeter usage. Testing for voltage and amperage and capacitance and just all the basic functions of a multimeter, how to use them. Okay, so that was day 1. Oh, and we went over batteries too, the different types of batteries. So you have your starter batteries, right? That's going to be on your chassis system. And then we went over coach batteries, which is what runs the 12 volts in your coach on that system. Different chemistries of batteries, of course, we went over. There's the lead acid battery, you got your AGM, your gel, and then lithium ion batteries. We kind of touched on those too. Also how to connect them either in series or in parallel. What's the difference? And so that was all day 1. Pretty chock full of information on day 1. Just kind of throwing at you. And a lot of it, like I said, a lot of it I already knew or had some kind of an idea about it, but they ran a pretty good detail over a lot of this stuff. So that was pretty neat. Okay, so now day 2 was all about the AC electrical system. So, day 1 was 12 volt DC systems. Day 2, we went over the 120 volt AC system. So your house system, right? How that runs. So we went over the difference between 30 and 50 amp. The different RVs, some RVs have 30 amp outlet, some have 50. And sometimes you're at a campground where you have a 50 amp RV, but you can only plug into a 30 amp outlet. And what's the difference? Well, it's not just a matter of 20 amps. On a 50 amp RV, you have 2 hot legs of 120 volts, 50 amps each, right? So you have 2 different legs of voltage coming in. 30 amp, you only have 1. So it's way more than just a difference of 20 amps. And so we went over that and what that difference is. We also went over inverters and how they operate. We went over the breaker panel, the main breaker, how from the pedestal coming in, power coming in, goes to the main breaker, and from there it goes out to all the different systems in your RV. So we went over that. Wire sizes and how that matters, and how the different amperage determines the wire size that you need. So we went over those different things. We did a bunch of labs on day 2, and those included testing AC and DC circuits. We did hot skin testing. We learned about hot skin and what that causes, causes hot skin. which is, if you're not familiar with hot skin, what that is say you touch a piece of metal on the outside of your RV and you're also touching the ground and you get shocked. What causes that? Well, we learned what causes it, and we also learned how to test for that. Because, nobody wants to get shocked when they're holding onto their grab bar walking into their RV, especially if you're barefoot. If you got hot skin, you're gonna really, really feel that. So we learned how to detect that and test for that and fix that. We went over water heaters. Very basic stuff, of course. We didn't go very in depth in these labs. The labs were about 30 to 45 minutes long, and so we just kind of went over the basics of the water heaters, how they worked, water heater element, how to test for that, make sure that the water heating element works, and how to replace those, things like that. And then connecting batteries. Again, we went over series and parallel. And in the lab, we talked about it on day one, but we actually did a lab on it where we really learned a little bit more the difference between series and parallel. So that was day 2 of fundamentals. Okay, day 3 started out with propane systems, the different cylinders that, the difference between a cylinder and a tank. Propane tank is on a motorhome, then they're fixed, right? You don't take those out to go get them filled. You got to drive your motorhome and get it filled. So we learned about the difference, how they operate, things like that. The inspections, different inspections that are required on DOT cylinders versus the ASME tanks. What else did we learn? The different valves and the regulators, 2-stage regulator, how it takes the high pressure of the propane, steps it down 2 stages. The first stage is down to 10 psi, second stage is down to 11 inches of water column. What is water column? We learned about that. Basically, it's 11 inches of water column is about 0.4 psi, so very, very little. That's the running pressure in these RVs. So we learned about that. We also learned about the LP detectors, how they operate, how they test for if you have a propane leak inside your RV, how those things work. Water systems. We learned about our gray tanks and our black tanks, the plumbing involved in that, also freshwater tanks. A little bit on how to clean them, not a whole lot on that, but went over a little bit on sanitizing your freshwater tanks and cleaning out your black and gray water tanks. I think that was about it as far as going over stuff. Then we did another set of labs. These labs included testing for propane leaks, how to test. So using a tool, you can hook up to either the stove. You take a burner off and you hook this, it's called a manometer or manometer, as I like to call it. You hook this tool up to you take a burner off, hook it up to the stove, and then you can test the pressure on coming in, and then you let it sit. You shut everything off, you let it sit, and that'll determine if you have a leak or not. If that 11 inches of water column, if that needle starts to fall, well, you have a propane leak. So we learned how to do that. We learned about, in the labs, the inverter and battery charging systems, how those things operated. Air conditioners and how to test, basic tests on air conditioners. Oh, how to test your capacitors and your compressors on your air conditioners. So real basic tests to see if real easy way to see if your compressor is going out or not, or if you need to replace your capacitor. So we learned how to do that. That was pretty cool, learning how to do that. And then the last lab that we did on this day was the RV wheels and hubs, how to repack bearings, learn about the different types of axles on RVs. Again, all of this is very, very basic, about much as you can learn in about 30 to 45 minutes. So simple stuff, but packed full of a lot of information. Very interesting to me. I absolutely loved it. So that was day 3. Day 4 of fundamentals was going more over the RV air conditioners, refrigeration basics, right? How the air conditioner works by taking in the air, how it passes over the different coils, right? You got your evaporator coils and your condenser coils, how those operate, what the compressor does to the refrigerant, and just how the basic air conditioner system works. We went over the freeze controls. What happens if your RV air conditioner starts to freeze up? How does it detect that? The little freeze sense that's in there, how it detects those things. The heat pumps, right? Some in fact, ours, one of our AC units also has a heat pump function. And so kind of talked about how that works, how it's got the reversing valve and it just reverses the flow of the refrigerant and takes it from producing cold air to producing warm air. It's pretty interesting how those work. Then we talked a little bit about the absorption refrigerators on RVs. Very, very basics. There's the absorption refrigerator versus the 12-volt refrigerator versus 120-volt compressor refrigerator. So we kind of glossed over basics. Not a whole lot that an RV tech can do with a 12-volt or a 120-volt compressor refrigerator, but a lot that we can do and test on the absorption refrigerators. So that was day 4. It sounds like it wasn't a lot, but it was a full day of learning this stuff. So really, really neat information. And then day 5, the last day, so Friday, was, we ended up getting out a little bit early on Friday, but we still learned a ton on that day. And things we learned there was water heaters. We went over water heaters, more in depth on the water heaters, how they operate. That the fact that they can work on both propane and 120 volt electricity, how those things do, how to clean a water heater, how to, basic maintenance, taking care of your systems. Little bit on the tankless water heaters. That's what we have. We have a tankless water heater on here. And again, not a whole lot that technicians can really do with tankless water heaters other than when they go bad, pretty much got to replace them. Unfortunately, but there are a lot of things that we can do on the standard tanked RV water heaters. So learn the difference about that. Basically, how to troubleshooting, what happens if your water heater works on gas but not on electric, or vice versa. How you can, the things to look for right away if that happens. So that was great. Again, flushing the water heaters, how to and things that I didn't know, things that I was not aware of, that you should be flushing these tanked water heaters out, well, a lot more often than I thought. We also went over the basics on winterizing, if you need to winterize your RV, which is something that I used to have to do. Now that we're full time, we don't have to deal with that. Our winterizing of the RV is getting the heck out of where it's cold, right? That's our form of winterization. So I quite enjoy that. But we went over how to do that, how to bypass a water heater, because you don't want to fill your 6 or 12 gallon water heater full of antifreeze. So just the basics again. What else did we talk about? And then we talked about furnaces, the propane furnaces, some of the things that can go wrong on those. I'm going to tell you right now, one of the biggest things to go wrong on those is the sail switch. So if your furnace turns on, the fan comes on, but it never blows any warm air, and then it shuts off after about 45 seconds or so, sail switch. You need to replace your sail switch. we learned that, how to test the sail switch and make sure that, because that's not the only thing that can cause that. That's just the most likely thing that would cause that. But we learned how to test that, because you don't want to just replace a sail switch if that's not the sail switch, right? So you need to know how to test that switch. Basically, the whole signal flow, how to trace the electrical signal flow, right? Starting from the switch when you turn it on, or in the case of the furnace, your thermostat. Basically, how to test that flow of electricity going from your thermostat down to your furnace, and then where does it go into the furnace to the control board and all that, right? Testing that to see, okay, where's my problem start, right? That's the biggest thing that they stressed in fundamentals is follow the flow of electricity, right? Where does it start, and what path does it take to get to where it needs to go, right? When you start testing along these paths and you no longer have electricity where you should, there's your problem, right? And so they really, really stress that, how to test for that, and to just pound it into our heads, follow the flow of electricity. You will always find the problem if you do that, right? If you start jumping ahead, you go over here, and you got no power, now you got to kind of go, backwards, which sometimes is easier to do, but you have to know how to do that, how to go backwards or how to start at the beginning and go forward, and when it's appropriate to do one or the other. And then when it was all said and done, we took our final exam. Gosh, I can't remember how many questions there were. 60 questions? I could be wrong. There might have been more than that. I think there was 60 questions. I ended up scoring, when it was all said and done, I scored a 99 out of 100. I missed one. Oh, I was so mad. I was so mad at myself. No, I'm just kidding. No, it was the test was fairly easy. Prior to the test, we kind of did a little study session, right? So they went over some stuff. Not exactly what was going to be on the test, but I mean, generally what was going to be on the test. So there was a little study session, and then we took the test, and then after the test, oh, and by the way, if you are planning on going through this system, there's a bonus question, and most people don't even answer it. So the question is, what color is Todd's black shirt? Of course, the answer is black, right? But here's the key. That question was not on. They told you what the bonus question was going to be, but it's not on the test. So most people, they finish the test, they don't see that question, they just turn it in, right? According to Todd, if 100% of the class ever answers that question properly, then there's some, I don't know, he's like get a cooked brisket or something like that for the entire class. He's never had to do it in all these years that he's been teaching his class. And I found out why. I was like, how do people miss a question like that, right? What color is Todd's black shirt? Well, it's black. Because it's not on the test, that's why. You're just supposed to write the answer in. So if you ever come and take this class, just know, on the final exam, even though the question's not there, write the answer anyways. So that was it. That was the week of fundamentals, and I got to tell you, I had a great experience. Todd was an awesome teacher. He was not only was he hilarious, but he teaches in a way to make you remember things, and so it was great. It was an absolutely exceptional experience. So if you just want to come you could do just the 1 week of fundamentals. If you're just you're not planning on being an RV technician, you just want to learn how to know the basics and how to troubleshoot things, come to fundamentals class. It's well worth it for the RV owner. All right, so that week wrapped up week 1, and we'll see how week 2 goes. I think I'm doing refrigeration. So learning all about RV refrigerators. That's going to be the advanced courses. So week 2, 3, 4, and 5 are going to be the advanced courses. So we signed up for those, and stay tuned because that's what's coming.